The risk of cyber attacks is on the rise and drafting victims onto a global battlefield. Increasingly, government entities, private industries, and citizens are the targets and unwitting sponsors of terrorist operations and bad actors the world over. Just Saying explains. Welcome to Just Saying. I'm Allison Cartervold, here to tell you a bit about the cyber attacks that are dominating the attention this January 2020 news cycle. Chinese, Russian, and Iranian hackers, plus their proxies, along with everyday old criminals, are utilizing the most active and perhaps costly battlefield facing the United States in this new decade. It stretches out around the globe and goes unnoticed until it reaches out to devastate you as you sit in the comfort of your own office or home. Right now, the story that Russian hackers targeted the Ukrainian company Burisma is making headlines, just like it always does, as it endlessly tries to meddle in elections and the internal views of its rivals. And not just in the United States. For example, they have been very busy in South America this past year trying to limit the opposition to its ally Venezuela. It's what Russia does, and it's nothing new. Nor is it limited to Russia. Espionage and propaganda campaigns against foreign countries have gone on forever. For example, the British did it to us when seeking U.S. support before we entered World War II. They actually sent the precursor to what became their MI6 and MI5 over, and those agents fed false stories to newspapers and organized protests trying to get us to enter the war sooner. Not cool, but not new. What is relatively new is the cyber aspect of it. Countries that currently fancy taking a turn at this include Iran. In the wake of escalated tensions with the U.S., experts fear Iran will ramp up its cyber attacks. However, these latest developments are just the tip of a long spear continually trying to pierce America's defenses. All right, Just Sayers, before we get too deep into this topic, I want to let you know that we are very excited that you chose to join us as we begin a new year of giving you the gist on complicated stories that are generally underreported. In turn, we ask that you follow us on the website, your favorite podcast platform, and our social media. All the pertinent links should be available to you in the show notes and on our website, which is gistsaying.com, justsaying.com, gistsaying.com. All right, now that we have that out of the way, let's take a look at cyber threats, starting with the latest example coming out of Iran. The same night that Iran shot missiles at U.S.-occupied targets in Iraq, an unusual power surge knocked out my home's internet capabilities. When conversations with neighbors revealed they too were impacted, half-serious jokes swirled in speculation of a possible cyber attack, not against us individually, but against our internet provider, right? Well, thankfully, by morning, everything was up and running again. However, the incident did prompt me to revisit a story I was working on before the new year. What I found shows that our satire was not without basis. Unfortunately, Iran's cyber warfare threats are real. As you probably have heard, the United States killed Iranian General Qasem Soleimani near the Baghdad airport via drone on January 3rd. The strike followed a buildup of provocative Iranian actions over the past several months that include downing a U.S. drone and launching rocket attacks against U.S. bases in Iraq that killed one American and left several others injured. On December 29th, the same day that the United States used airstrikes to retaliate against Iranian-backed Hezbollah in Syria and Iraq for the death of that American contractor, An attack group linked to Iran initiated a cyber attack. It used a data deleting program known as a wiper in an attempt to destroy data on systems at Bahrain's national oil company. The group reportedly had access to the BAPCO network for nearly 6 months before it chose to execute the malware on that day, so cybersecurity experts don't think it was a coincidence. Soleimani was widely known as being not just one of Iran's key leaders, but for being the head of massive and long-running state-sponsored terrorist activities. The drone strike came in the wake of the physical attacks Soleimani had just directed against the U.S. Embassy in Iraq. Also, the White House says Soleimani was in the process of directing future physical attacks on other American embassies. In anticipation of the Iranian response to Soleimani's death, Twitter trended with hashtags proclaiming, "We were at the edge of World War III." The U.S. redeployed troops to the Middle East as a precautionary measure, and warnings went out to companies at home. Iran ended up launching missile attacks against 2 U.S.-occupied bases in Iraq, which fortunately did not result in any deaths. Unfortunately, it also mistakenly shot down a Ukrainian airliner, killing all 176 people on board. A lot of those people were Iranians. A lot of them were Canadian. And after that, their physical response went quiet. They actually proclaimed they were done. In the meantime, the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, CISA, which is an agency within the Department of Homeland Security, issued 3 updates warning against physical and cyber attacks from Iran. The warnings directly addressed IT professionals with advice on how to secure their networks against an Iranian attack. They took this really seriously. On January 6th, the CISA described the threat as thus. This is quoting their document. Iran has a history of leveraging asymmetric tactics to pursue national interests beyond its conventional capabilities. More recently, its use of offensive cyber operations is an extension of that doctrine. Iran has exercised its increasingly sophisticated capabilities to suppress both social and political perspectives deemed dangerous to Iran and to harm regional and international opponents. Iranian cyber threat actors have continuously improved their offensive cyber capabilities. They continue to engage in more conventional activities ranging from website defacement, distributed denial of service attacks, and theft of personally identifiable information. But they have also demonstrated a willingness to push the boundaries of their activities, which include destructive wiper malware and potentially cyber-enabled kinetic attacks. The warning went on to say, the U.S. intelligence community and various private sector threat intelligence organizations have identified the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps as a driving force behind Iranian state-sponsored cyber attacks, either through contractors in the Iranian private sector or by the IRGC itself. Now you can tell that was a government statement, can't you? According to cyber threat researchers at Checkpoint Security, during the first week after Soleimani's death, at least 35 organizations faced attacks by cyber offenses specifically traced to Iran's state-sponsored hacking groups. It estimates 17% of those targets were in the U.S., with an additional 7% being in Israel. Though alarming, the security company told Forbes that this is not a material change over what was happening before Soleimani was killed. A source explained to Forbes that, quote, "no significant response has yet been seen by us," unquote. The key word there is yet. While Iran has publicly declared that its overt physical retaliation against the United States is over, there is fear that its cyber warfare efforts may still be gearing up. Current U.S. government posturing indicates that any widespread cyber attack traced back to Iran will be met with an even more destructive cyber or physical response from the United States. So Iran will likely first try to mitigate that risk, put distance between themselves and the actual attack. Therefore, security experts speculate this may be the calm before the storm. Damaging the United States in any way possible has long been an openly stated goal of Iran. All you have to do is listen to any protests and you'll hear them shouting, "Death to America." That's a favorite chant. The damage they want to inflict includes cyber attacks. Be it through state-sponsored groups or proxy hackers, Iran has long cheered so-called nuisance attacks that include the defacement of websites and the disruption of their services. Just as examples, this January, hackers claiming Iranian backing defaced the U.S. government's Federal Depository Library Program website with a picture of a bloodied President Trump. Intruders also altered the Texas Department of Agriculture's website with a message stating, "Hacked by Iranian hacker." That type of activity is what's considered nuisance hackings. However, Iran also has more lofty goals. It craves the ability to use state-directed attacks against critical infrastructure targets like energy, transportation, and finance, while also using concerted attacks to steal or destroy the data and systems of commercial organizations, similar to the attack it attempted in December against Babco's network. Included in its January 4, 2020 terrorism threat summary, the Department of Homeland Security stated that, quote, Iran maintains a robust cyber program and can execute cyber attacks against the United States. Iran is capable, at a minimum, of carrying out attacks with temporary disruptive effects against critical infrastructure in the United States, unquote. So you might be wondering, if they have this capability to attack the United States, why haven't they done it yet? Well, while Iran has been investing heavily in the buildup of its cyber warfare capabilities, it is still not believed to be a match for those of the United States. That means it's likely that either inability or fear, or both, is what's keeping the regime currently in check. It is a precarious balance that is continually shifting. So that's where we're at with Iran right now, and it's going to continually change. Next, let's take a look at your risk of being impacted by a cyber attack. By definition, cyber warfare involves the actions of a nation-state or international organization to attack and attempt to damage another nation's computers or information networks through, for example, computer viruses or denial of service attacks. Also devastating, though, are more locally targeted cyber attacks. A cyber attack is a malicious and deliberate attempt by an individual or organization to breach the information system of another individual or organization, and usually the attacker seeks some benefit from disrupting the victim's network. If you'd like to get into more of the definitions of these types of cyber attacks, go to the website at gistssayn.com and click on the corresponding article to this podcast. As always, there is an article, and within that article, there are links to the reference materials I used. One link leads to a Cisco Systems article that has a lot of useful definitions. So you can do that, but you can also link to a lot of the other research that I did before putting together this podcast. Okay? According to Cisco Systems, cyber attacks hit businesses every day. Between January 2016 and October 2017, for example, the total volume of events increased almost fourfold and has continued to rise ever since. Former Cisco CEO John Chambers once said, quote, there are two types of companies, those who have been hacked and those who don't yet know they have been hacked, unquote. The FBI is the lead federal agency for investigating cyber attacks by criminals, overseas adversaries, and terrorists. It agrees that the threat is serious and growing. Cyber intrusions are becoming more commonplace, more dangerous, and more sophisticated, striking a more extensive array of targets. The FBI says the nation's critical infrastructure, including both private and public sector networks, are targeted by adversaries on a continued basis. So, us sitting at home and wondering if our internet had been knocked out by Iran? Not that far-fetched. An estimated 53% of cyber attacks result in damages of more than $500,000. It's seemingly to the point now that unless you live like the Unabomber, off the grid, in the woods, by yourself, you or an entity you rely on are at risk. Companies trade secrets and other sensitive corporate data along with universities' cutting-edge research and development have long been a cause for targeting. Hackers also quickly identified private individuals as easy prey for fraud and identity theft, and as a means to line their pockets and support their causes. While online predators have long targeted children. Now, municipalities and school districts are also increasingly subject to attack. Armor is a security solutions provider. The head of its threat resistance unit and research team, Chris Hinckley, told TechRadar why cybercriminals have begun to target the education sector, saying, quote, "The attackers know that the services these organizations provide are critical to their communities. They also know that schools and municipalities are typically more vulnerable to security attacks because of their limited budgets and lack of IT staff. This combination can give the threat actors a tremendous advantage over their victims because they know these entities cannot afford to shut down and are more often more likely to pay the ransom." Unquote. A new report from Armor states that 1,039 schools across the United States fell victim to ransomware attacks in 2019. Its research also showed the number of affected schools more than doubled during the last 3 months of the year. Across the board, experts seem to agree ransomware is on the rise. Criminals are using ransomware to steal and hold information captive at such an alarming rate, the FBI has issued multiple new alerts since the fall of last year. These indicate that individuals and businesses alike are being held hostage by criminal syndicates, often of foreign origins. In some cases, like Iran, the government backs the groups. Monies collected are then used to support all forms of criminal activities and even terrorism. These cyber data nappers will ransom not just financial information on customers, as was the old way, but operating systems, accounts and receivables, shipping and inventory records, patient and student records, anything and everything that can prevent the target from functioning normally. Anything disruptive enough to prompt payment is fair game. As you're probably aware, scammers often send ransomware through email phishing campaigns. That's phishing with a PH. A virus will lie dormant within the email until someone inside the network clicks on the infected file or link. The fraudster can then access all the system's devices and data. The bad actor encrypts the system, effectively locking the rightful owners out. The attacker then promises to decrypt your information if you pay up, usually by virtual currency like Bitcoin. Unfortunately, there is no way to guarantee that the cyber criminal will unlock your data if you pay. There has been a noticeable increase in these types of attacks starting back in 2018. A report by the security research firm Malwarebytes says they shot up through the roof in the last quarter of 2018. Its data also shows that attacks rose nearly 400% from the previous quarter and then continued to increase throughout 2019. Texas businesses and organizations were some of the most frequent targets during this most recent period. In August, more than 20 government entities, most in rural areas, fell victim to a coordinated statewide ransom attack. In October, it was Heritage Auction's turn. A ransomware attack took the Dallas-based auction house offline for 3 days. The Dallas Observer reported that no one paid the ransom in these cases, but as a result, several weeks later, many were still struggling to return to normal operations. The FBI advises all victims of ransomware not to pay. It says, even if you manage to get your system back online, the attacker likely left other malware hidden on your system, and therefore it will require a remediation team to completely wipe the computers and restore everything from clean offline backups anyways. Beyond the cost of ransom, the FBI says you also face the loss of productivity, legal fees, and the need to purchase credit monitoring services for employees and customers whose information lay exposed during the hack. The statistics gathered by the FBI's Internet Crime Complaint Center show Internet-enabled theft, fraud, and exploitation were responsible for a staggering $2.7 billion in financial losses in 2018 alone. Now, this is a figure derived from reported instances. Yet you need to understand, many attacks go unreported to authorities, and even more are never made public. We don't hear about them. I can think of 2 companies right off the top of my head that really didn't go public. I don't think one even reported it to the FBI. One did. One paid the ransom, one didn't. So it's really hard to tell what the exact number is. Prevention is the FBI's prescribed method to deal with this ongoing threat. However, that is of little consequence to those unable to ward off a successful attack. Even with defensive measures in place, the landscape is continuously changing and attackers break through. To ward off imminent financial ruin or even just embarrassment, countless companies and individuals have paid and will continue to pay to get their information back. Regardless of what the FBI advises, this is unlikely to change. As a result, hackers will keep hacking, and the cycle will continue to reward them with untold billions. So here's the gist. First, unlike China, Russia, and the United States, Iran is not at the top of the cyber warfare capable nations. However, the government does believe Iran can inflict damage on the United States and will do so if it thinks it can get away with it without serious repercussions. Second, cyber attacks against governments, businesses, and individuals are on the rise with no end in sight. Ransomware scams are simultaneously draining coffers here and filling those of bad actors, including terrorist organizations around the world. Data napping has replaced kidnapping as a favored revenue stream for the wicked. As always, remember, you can agree or disagree. It's okay. I'm just saying. That's it for now. I'm Allison Cardivold, asking that you take a moment to like and follow us on the website, podcast platforms, and social media sites like Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. You can find all those links at our website at gistsayn.com. Until next time, have faith and God bless.